Okay. I'm always so nervous to do this anyhow, especially when what I have is kind of a complaint. I would like to express my objection to even having an outreach fund. I can see the reasons for having a discretionary fund for the board, but a town fund to solely donate to 501c3s, I think is inappropriate. The town should not be picking winners and losers. We're giving support to basically only 2 of the 501c3s in town. And one is a national organization, and the other one was supposed to eventually support itself. And after 8 years, it's still not doing that. So I don't know how that goes, but anyhow, neither organization exists to serve the entire town. You know, one part is for businesses on Main Street, and the other one is for after-school program for kids. And, you know, that doesn't cover everybody in town. I just don't see that that's very equal. So, and also if we keep doling out money to nonprofits, others are going to come with their hands out. I heard Zion Lutheran Church wants to build a big $1 million building. And, you know, are we going to donate money to a church then? I mean, that might be controversial and stuff. So I just think this is a can of worms that we have opened up, and we should try to close that can up as soon as we can. It's not the town's business to support these groups with residents' cash. Our tax money is essentially being used without the residents' permission to support things that are not involved in running the town. When residents donate money, they pick the charity, they get the thanks, they get to take it off their taxes. But when it's done with our tax money, we get none of those things. And so the town can support these nonprofits, but in ways like waiving fees at the parks or something like that, or loaning them equipment. I mean, the Boys and Girls Club used to have, oh, I'm almost out of time. They used to have a summer work program that we donated to, but at least we got something out of it. So anyhow, it seems like this donating to nonprofits is okay with the trustees and the administrations. All we need to do is develop the hoops for them to jump through. But I object to the whole entire premise of even donating to charities, nonprofits, with town money. If we have extra outreach funds, give it to the parks. They're available for everybody, or pay down our debt or something. I'm sure we can find some other use for money, but I just think it's inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Reginald Westfall. I have a few things, kind of goes along with what Kathy was talking about. First of all, I would like to know why the water restriction signs aren't up in all the subdivisions. Since water is a problem with our community, last year we had them up in Buffalo Creek. I've seen only one water restriction sign, and it's out in front of the town hall, and it's fallen over in the grass. Took a picture of it today. So since we're big into this this water thing, I thought that might be important for you to know, because people in our subdivision are watering any day of the week, any length of time now. So how are you going to handle that, Mayor? And if we can't handle that, then I'm wondering how we're going to handle all this Water Now Alliance stuff, phase 1 and phase 2, and replacing toilets, et cetera, in different people's homes. Anyway, secondly, where are the roadside signs for fireworks, and letting the people know that the fireworks laws changed in this town? I go into Fort Collins, they got it right on Harmony, big sign. Fireworks are illegal in Fort Collins, fines $1,000 and up. That's it. You know, we don't have any of that. People don't even know there's one. I'm going around the houses again. They don't know that. So, and what is our fine for fireworks, illegal fireworks, I'm wondering?
This is public comment, not
Yes,
question.
well, it is a question, yeah.
Wait, so this is for comments.
Okay, I want to know in the future then, that's my comment. Thirdly, called the dispatcher on Sunday, 26th of June, regarding illegal fireworks going off on 3233 Wigwam Way. Talked to the deputy that came out to see that and got some information. And sounds like our efforts to curb illegal fireworks is not any different than it's been in previous years. In fact, we're only going to have 2 people on up until the 4th of July. Then you're just going to have six more people. Most of those are going to go to the fireworks. So we're going to be in the same thing. So why do we even make laws? And to go along with what Kathy has, it seems that we have lots of money to spend on discretionary and nonprofits, but we can't afford, and we can afford beer fests and all kinds of activities and that cater to a minority of residents, while funds just can't be found to adequately enforce the fireworks law, which impacts the entire community. Why is that? And in Buffalo Creek, oh, ran out of time. One more thing. Could you guys get a bigger screen for that TV so we can see back there?
Thank you. Our next item is a presentation on the Board of Trustees outreach and discretionary funds. Ms. Garcia.
Hi, Mayor and Trustees, Patti Garcia, Town Administrator. So this was the Board discretionary and outreach funds was something that was discussed with the previous board back in February of 2022. As we're starting to prepare for the 2023 budget, I wanted to bring this item back to the trustees. We have 4 new individuals, and before we put a lot of staff time into these efforts and creating applications and things like that, I wanted to see what the direction or the idea of the board would be as far as the discretionary and outreach funds. So the outreach fund was funded this year with $107,500 used to commit $82,500 to Main Street and $25,000 to the Wellington Boys and Girls Club in Eagles After Hours. The discretionary fund is funded at $61,150. Primarily, it is used to fund the fireworks each year. And then the balance of it is used for items that potentially were not budgeted for, such as dinners when you all meet a little bit earlier. We funded the, what is it called? The crowd manager training for the CAC members, because that wasn't something that wasn't budgeted, and really the CAC didn't have money in their budget for it. So, you know, it's used for items like that. So essentially, I mean, the memo outlines the information. You know, it's really up to the board how they want to move forward on this. You know, questions for us is, do you want to continue with both funds? An option is to, if we continue to fund Main Streets, that potentially it's its own line item as opposed to included in it as a fund, that it would be something that would be provided each year, and you could determine that funding amount, same as Boys and Girls Club, if that is something that's of interest. The discretionary fund is definitely something that's used in municipalities across the state and used for funding small projects, perhaps that were not, as I said, included in the budget, that might be brought to you, whether that's an internal project or perhaps I'm thinking like Boy Scouts. You know, they want to do some really cool project in the town. They have raised $200, but they need another $200, and they can come to you and ask to fund that extra money. The request back in February was to make to not allow more than $5,000 to be expended per application. So there's options. I'm just we are working to meet the will of the board on this. We, staff, we just want to make sure that we're doing what you guys want. And I really don't want to spend a whole lot of time on something if you're not interested in pursuing it. So welcome to take any questions. And I appreciate the comments from Ms. Widelis and Mr. Westfall. It's important to hear from the community on these items.
Start with, Trustee Quigan. Any questions?
Not right at the moment.
Representative?
Certainly with the discretionary fund, I think that's obviously pretty important stuff we've got going on there, the fireworks stuff, as well as the ADA stuff that we just passed for the 4th of July and that. So I think it's important we keep the board discretionary fund around just in case we do need to fund something. As far as the outreach fund goes, Main Streets obviously is very important to this town, and I don't think we want to see that program go away. Clearly, we do want to still see them continue to go down the path of getting to be self-sustaining. But if that means a separate line item or keeping the outreach fund, I suppose it doesn't matter to me so much, just that we do continue to fund them until they're able to get on their feet.
Yeah, so I agree with what Trustee Mason said about the certain things within the discretionary fund. My preference, and this is something I would prefer, is that we actually have the fireworks be a separate budget item instead of just being part of the discretionary fund, and then maybe reduce that down. I believe in the past, the number was around $10,000 or so, which again, should be used for small projects, things like the ADA, it's a couple $1,000s here, a couple $1,000s there. So what I would like to see, if the board is open to that, is just removing the fireworks out and having it be its own line item. So we know exactly, you don't have to it's somewhere buried in the board discretionary fund. With the outreach fund, that's something, I spoke about this back in February. I feel very strongly that our job as government is to provide services for the community. It's not to support nonprofits, as much great work as they are doing. And I appreciate we had over $500,000 in grants come in just this last year from the Main Streets program. So I think that what I would recommend was to look at different partnership. What does that look like for them to get self-sustaining? I know in a lot of other communities, in a lot of what we've done, I believe we've basically funded the position of executive director has been where a lot of our funding has gone to allow them to operate. In a lot of other communities, I understand that position is actually a staff member of the town. And so if that's one of the ways, maybe we look at that and actually having it be a staff position. And especially if we're putting $80,000 of funds out there, that really should be something that we have the ability as the town staff, that should be a position that's reporting to our town administrator, not just going out there to some other organization that we have no direct impact over what is done with those funds. So I would say with that, I would love to see maybe some other options that we can continue to support the Main Streets program as they work towards becoming self-sufficient. But I would like to see us move away from the process of, because it becomes which nonprofits do we support, which ones don't we? We've got a great letter here about the community services building, which is fantastic. I'm excited about what they're doing, but then do we support this and that? And I've said this before, I've had conversations with some of my peers at CML last year in communities where they are taking and giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to funds for great causes, and they have roads and parks falling apart and they don't have the money to fix them. And so things just keep getting pushed down the road and pushed down the road. And I spoke with the mayor from Salida while we're up there, and even in their case, they do still have a portion of that, but for them, it's they just take a percentage and they give it completely to another nonprofit that just handles all of it. They do nothing. They literally say, here's the money that goes to different community projects. So they aren't picking winners and losers. I think we shouldn't be doing it at all. Because again, taxpayers aren't giving us their dollars to support a nonprofit that we think is important. They're giving us their tax dollars to pay for police, to pay for roads, to pay for their water, their sewer, the parks and things like that. So I'd really prefer that we focus in, we don't have an excess of money right now. Especially as, had a great meeting with the finance committee yesterday. And as we're looking at budget and coming through that, and we have our water roundtable, it's looking at rates. There's a lot of areas that we've got to be looking at where do we bring things in. And so I think that this is something that we really shouldn't be putting funds towards an outreach fund. So I would say, let's work on finding maybe a solution to bring the Main Streets in a different way. If we want to continue to work with that program, but I think that having an outreach fund, I don't think that's something we should do.
So I'm going to mirror trustee Mason and trustee Gator and the idea that I think the discretionary fund is very important because we would not have been able to have those funds for the ADA accommodations, CAC, crowd control, which was a new requirement for us required by the fire department. So crowd control every so many people that attend an event. So my kind of ask, and I had met with Miss Garcia about this, I would really like if we could to address an economic development. It's in our budget. And having those funds allocated towards supporting new businesses and existing businesses, but all of the businesses here in Wellington, I think that would be an awesome opportunity. I know I'd found out from Anita that they serve like 89 businesses through their district, but we also have over 300 businesses signed up here. I didn't even know we had 300 businesses here in Wellington. I would love to see more of some of these businesses we're not seeing in general. And I would like to know or have some kind of outreach with them. Why aren't we seeing them? Why aren't we hearing from them? Is there ways that we can assist in helping in kind to get their information out on our website, to do some kind of introductory thing for the new businesses like Mortensen? They're a very big business and they're over on the south side of town. So I think that's kind of what I would like to do, is looking at getting rid of the outreach fund, keeping the discretionary fund for in case of emergencies, definitely having a line item for the fireworks. I can't see us ever removing fireworks from Wellington. If we do, I see, a lot of the towns are navigating towards drones that are being utilized to light up the sky instead of explosives. I can't ever see us not celebrating the 4th of July here in town. So I think that would be my general idea. And then definitely look at bringing on an economic development, because then we are accountable for the money that we're sending out. If we take $85,000 and hand it to a nonprofit, we're no longer accountable. We can't tell them where those funds went. We can't say we don't want that utilized for that. With economic development, we can say this is a goal or these are target areas and whatnot. We're accountable to our residents, I think, is the big thing in that. So those are kind of my general ideas.
Can I ask Ms. Garcia a question real quick? To the board's knowledge or staff's knowledge, has there ever been an ask that's been turned down? Not that I know of. Thank you.
Yeah, so my personal thoughts, discretionary fund, obviously, good thing, something we need to have. I like outreach. I think it improves quality of life for the residents. I don't think we need to really be the ones making that decision. But I think it's important. I think without, they may be national nonprofits, but that doesn't mean they get national money all the time. It's allocated to larger municipalities, things like that. And if we want to be able to provide for our citizens things that improve quality of life, I think it's kind of important to have that. But at the same time, it is a reach for me. So yeah, I think this is something that we need to discuss as a board, obviously, have a work session on. You guys, I think, maybe agree on that. And then we can go from there. Line items for the fireworks, I think that's a great idea. I think looking at how to do something different with Main Streets, kind of along the line of somebody on staff, something along those lines, is something that's worth also looking into. But yeah, so that's my thoughts. Yeah, work session.
Okay, I propose that we set that up after the presentation by Main Streets on July 19th. So it'll be sometime the first part of August, which might kind of intersect with budget preparation, but I think would be best to hear from Main Streets before we move forward on this. I've got your notes and I can start crafting some information to put together for the work session, and we will do it sometime in August. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is the Raftelis presentation. Ms. Runkle.
Sorry, Victoria Runkle, and I'm a consultant now. I am not the interim finance director. Charity is the finance director. Thank you. When we started this process some time ago, one of the things that was in the contract is that Raftelis would come to you twice, at least twice, and give you a progress report and then do it at the end. And tonight we thought would be a good time because the roundtable people, participants, have reviewed basically a lot of good issues that Todd Cristano from the Raftelis Corporation will talk to you about. But we thought this would be a good point because tomorrow night, or I'm sorry, Thursday night, we meet again and we begin to get into some hard numbers with the roundtable people. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd Cristano from Raftelis.
See if I get this set up correctly here. I should just be able to.
Share your screen.
Okay, great. Excellent. Good evening, Mayor, trustees. My name is Todd Cristiano. I am with Raftelis Financial Consultants. As Vic mentioned, we are the consultant of record for the water, wastewater, and rate and fee study. I have an important topic to discuss tonight, and that is kind of the overview of our study and give you an idea of what we're doing, what we're looking at, and also answer any questions and document any feedback you might have about the study. So initially, let's talk a little about the goals and objectives. We'll talk about the rate study process. I'll go into a little bit of detail here about what we're doing because there's a lot of moving parts that we have to kind of sift through, a lot of puzzle pieces, if you will. Talk a little bit about price objectives and their importance as part of this study, and as well as the rate structures. And we'll follow with kind of our schedule and what we have remaining in the study. So one thing is that water and sewer rates, as many people know, have continued to increase over the years. We look at this graph here, the black line shows the CPI over the past number of years has been increasing, but the red dotted line shows that water and sewer cost to customers have been increasing at a much greater rate. And it's just not unique to Colorado and Utah and the Rocky Mountain states, but everywhere. So a lot of utilities are kind of battling those increased costs. And of course, with inflation going on right now, it's exacerbated that a little bit. So it's a challenge that every utility is facing. So the town's rates and fees from utilities, it's an enterprise fund, so we need to use rates and fees to recover our costs for providing service. And so the costs we need to recover, operations, we need to fund our capital projects, both growth and non-growth related. We also need to maintain reserves and maintain the requirement for the bond covenants. We need to fund our growth related projects, and we need to ensure that we get adequate cost recovery. Well, how can we do that? And there's really only a couple of ways, and that's by looking at our financial plan and making sure we have sufficient revenue, and then looking at how much money we should be recovering from each customer class based on some unique characteristics, and how we recover those costs from our rate design, and also looking at tap fees for recovering growth-related costs. So there's 4 steps to a financial planning process, and it's very similar to what we're doing for this study. One is the financial plan. That tells us how much money does the utility need to maintain operations and being an ongoing concern 365 days a year. The cost of service is when we look at who should be paying what costs. When we look at the customer classes, the utilities have residential and commercial and irrigation. How much should those classes be recovering in their cost? And there's some ways we do that, and that's through the cost of service analysis, and I'll show you how that works in just a moment. Third thing is rate design, and it's how are we going to recover the money? If you're familiar with your rate structures, you know there's a service charge and a volumetric charge, and it's the balance of how are we going to recover the cost through the service charge or volume charge. And there's a number of ways to do that. And finally, the development of tap fees, making sure that growth pays for growth, so we can make sure that there's the balance of recovering costs between existing customers and new customers are paying their fair share. So that's all included in our study. On top of that, we're obviously doing a stakeholder group to help us evaluate different rate structure alternatives. And, we didn't make all these processes and practices up. It's comes from years and years of case precedent, court case precedent, and obviously industries like the American Water Works Association. There's a number of manuals that have been published about the principles of rate setting and financial planning. And we're following those principles as we go along through this study. So let's talk about the steps in a little more detail. The first step is our financial plan. And that's pretty simple. We need to look at our revenues that are coming in, and do our revenues meet our expenditures? And if not, do we need some revenue adjustments? Do we need to raise the amount of revenues or increase rates? And we also have to meet some policy objectives, and that's our reserve targets and our debt service coverage targets. And so when we look at that and we prepare the financial plan for the town, we're going to be balancing, juggling a lot of balls in the air to find the optimal financial plan that will minimize the impact to customers, but still recover the appropriate amount of revenue needed to maintain operations. Step two is basically taking our budget or years that we want to look at designing rates and saying, well, how are we going to recover this overall cost from all of our customers? That's what the cost of service analysis does. And you can see here, we've got 3 icons: residential, commercial, and irrigation. And those are your biggest customer classes. And through the cost of service analysis, we need to figure out, well, how much should the residential customers pay? How much should commercial, and how much should irrigation pay? Well, it's a fairly detailed process, and I'll just show it in a quick graphic of what we'll be going through. But we have to recognize that we have this revenue requirement or amount of money we need to recover from rates on an annual basis. We also know that the different customers place different types of demands on the system. If you think about an irrigation customer in the summertime and look at their profile of usage, either over the course of a day or over the course of a season or even the year, they use water much differently than, say, a commercial customer who might be more uniform through the year. The demands might be more consistent, and residential might have more of a higher use in the summertime. Well, all those types of demands place a different type of cost on the system that we need to recover. So the cost service analysis looks at a lot of different, I guess, more of the scientific things like how the system is run. We look at how all the systems function to provide service, and we're able to allocate those costs to the various customer classes to come up how much we need to recover from each of those customer classes in aggregate, the total dollars amount. Let's see here. Step 3, we're looking at is rate design. So once we get to our cost of service, we have to figure out, well, how are we going to recover the cost from these customer classes from residential? If we've determined that residential costs are $1 million, how are we going to recover that from each individual customer? And that comes down to the rate design. And I've got an example of your current residential rates. You've got a monthly service charge of $66 per month, and you have a tiered volumetric rate structure. As you use more, you pay more. Well, there's some options to look at in terms of, well, how we going to recover that. Obviously, we're going to take the cost of service analysis into consideration, but there's some other qualitative things that we can look at. And that comes down to the pricing objectives, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Similarly, we have wastewater rates as well. You have a monthly fixed charge, and that includes a volume allowance of 3,000 gallons, and anything above 3,000 gallons is assessed a volumetric rate. So we're going to be looking at both the water and wastewater rate structures and develop some alternatives. We're also going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at different rate design alternatives for both of those, multiple rate alternatives. And so step 4 comes down to tap fees. And this does impact rates a bit in case you design tap fees that don't recover the cost of expansion-related growth. You might have to recover that from user rates. If you don't get it from one area, you have to get it from the other. But part of our studies including developing tap fees that recover the cost of growth-related projects going into the future over the next 10 years. And that's an important part of the process because that determines how much revenue you might need to get from rates, trying to balance that out. So that's also step 4. Here are your tap fees now. This is very common tap fee structure by meter size, very common along the Front Range. You have a multi-family structure. It's based on a per unit. So very common along the Front Range. We're going to be evaluating not only the tap fee calculations of the amount that we need to recover from those fees, but also maybe looking at making some slight adjustments to those fees to ensure better cost recovery based on the type of development that is coming in. So let's get to the important part here, and that's pricing objectives. When we do a study like this, we do our financial plan, we do our cost of service, and we do those components. That's fairly prescriptive to looking at different rate designs, there's a lot of things we need to factor in. And a lot of that comes down to like community objectives. What do we want to accomplish through our rate structure? What do we want to send? What message do we want to send to our customers? And you can throw spaghetti at the wall and say, hey, we want a 4-tiered structure. No, what about a 3-tiered structure or 1-tiered structure? And you come up with all ideas. We have found that going through some pricing objectives and looking at some goals you want to achieve through pricing objectives through the rate structure will help us as consultants come back and develop a rate structure, a couple of alternatives that would address and meet those objectives and allow, in this case, the stakeholder group to kind of comment and provide some feedback on what we've come back to them with. So I'm going to go over some of the basic pricing objectives that we're using and we're actually employing with the stakeholder group, and we did in this previous meeting with them. I'll skip to this one here. There are some required objectives that we need to have. One of them is revenue sufficiency. We're not going to design rates that don't recover revenue. I mean, that's just kind of simple. We also are not going to design rates that are not defensible. That doesn't help anybody. So we know those are two objectives we got to have, but we need to put them up there to let everyone know that we're going to meet revenue sufficiency and we're going to be defensible in our rates. Our list here is revenue stability, cost recovery between classes. So we talk about making sure that we recover the proportionate amount of costs from residential and recover from commercial as a whole, the total class. Cost recovery within a class, making sure that to the extent possible, we can recover the cost from the low volume user and commensurate cost with a high volume user. Cost recovery between new and existing customers. This gets back to the old tap fee, making sure that tap fee revenue is paying for growth related projects and that rate revenue is funding ongoing operations. Efficient water use pricing signal, demand management, essential use pricing, customer understanding, customer impact, and ease of administration and implementation. And so what we do with this is we have our stakeholder group, and even with this stakeholder group, we go in and rank those. We have each one of the stakeholder members come up and put some green dots and say, which one is resonating with you? What do you think our rate structure should be communicating to our customers? I'll go through a couple of these definitions that I missed here. Revenue stability is making sure that the utility has stable revenues in case of an emergency. Say there's a wet period. July happens to be a wet period, you're going to lose some revenue. You can never forecast a wet period. You can certainly forecast dry and drought. That's a lot easier, but you never know when it's going to be a wet summer. So you want to have revenue stability, and there's a number of ways to design a rate structure to make sure you have revenue stability. There's not just one way to do that. And like I mentioned, the cost recovery between the classes, making sure that we recover cost proportionally between the various residential, commercial, and irrigation. And those also recovering costs between the low volume and maybe high volume users, make sure we've got proportionality there. And obviously the tap fee and user rate revenue. Efficient water use signal here is that we have a price signal designed in the rate structure that promotes the wise use of water, very similar to the tiered structure you have today. And one of the alternatives we might come back with is looking at a variation of that tiered structure to promote the wise use of water based on some of the comments and feedback we got from the stakeholder group. Demand management, this may not be as appropriate here, but in some communities that they're really running almost at capacity, and if they could move some customers off that peak demand time to help smooth out those peaks, we can design some rate structures that will meet that. Essential use pricing. This comes down to ensuring that each customer has the minimum amount of water, the essential water use for bathing, taking showers, and cooking and cleaning, and that sort of thing, at the lowest possible cost while still maintaining the level of service customers expect. Let's see here. Customer understanding, this is kind of a gimme as well. We want to make sure we have a rate structure that customers understand. I have seen rate structures that are very confusing by customers, but there's no desire to change them. So maybe sometimes this doesn't rise to the top for some utilities, and they get along just fine. And finally is impact on customers and the ease of administration and implementation. You want to be able to have a rate structure that you can implement, that your billing system has all the space available and has all the fields available to get that new rate structure and apply that accordingly. Let's see here. So those are rate structure, those are the pricing objectives that we've run through with the stakeholder group, and they've provided some feedback on that. We'll be going back to them on Thursday actually to show them some initial rate structure alternatives. So we're moving along in the process. Give you an idea of where we started this is we've got 4 meetings with a potential 5, but our first meeting was really just an introduction to the whole rate setting process, basically what I've presented here, but a little more detail. This last meeting, we wanted to give them some context around, well, how do customers use water? What's the residential customer class? What does that mean? How do those customers use water? How much water do they use? Same thing with commercial and irrigation. This next meeting coming up on Thursday, we will be looking at some rate structure design alternatives that go along with some of the pricing objectives they've identified as part of this study. And it's, we're going to come to them with a few objectives, and a few rate structure alternatives, and we're going to have a discussion. We might, mix and match some of these components to find the optimal rate structure that works for the group. The 4th meeting will be reviewing and getting the recommendation from them on the preferred rate structure alternatives. And if we need the 5th meeting to do some additional work, we've got that set aside as well. So to give you an idea, the schedule is, like I said, Thursday, we have our next meeting. Then after that, we have our August 4th meeting. That's where we'll try to be wrapping things up. And if we do need a 5th meeting, we can certainly do that. In late August, early September, we don't have any dates on the calendar yet, but that's when we'll be coming back to the board and trustees to present our findings and get feedback and comments on the entire study, everything from the financial plan, cost service rates, tap fees, and the rate structure alternatives. So that concludes my presentation. Can answer any questions or comments from trustees.
Just one, excuse me, one note, was it the 29th or 30th? Because the 29th is tomorrow, which is Wednesday.
It is Thursday. Is that okay? Apologize. Didn't mean
That's
to
okay.
scare anybody up there. We're meeting tomorrow instead of on Thursday. Surprise. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I, hopefully things are going well. I love that we have the roundtable there to work through this with you guys. I know one of the big things that is very important to me is that we see not just like one option or 2 options. I want to see different things and not just like, well, one and then one slightly different. I know one of the big things that I'd like to see is something that's more, instead of being so heavily focused on having a huge base rate and then having a very relatively small usage fee, to actually shift that balance over to the other side. Because we currently have a situation where me with my family of 8 pays like $20 a month more than my brother, where it's just him.
Understood.
He uses 2,000 gallons of water and we use like 6, and we're paying, minimally different amounts because it's all in the base rate. And that really, especially as we're talking about water conservation and trying to push that, when I can spend an extra 3,000-4,000 gallons of water doing whatever and it costs me $20, that's not really going to encourage me to save water versus if we're actually doing it based off usage. So I want to make sure that when you guys are going through that process, that we are given, whether it's better or not, we have to decide that. But I want to make sure that's one of the options that's being brought back.
Understood.
Are you good? So my question stems kind of off of Trustee Gator's, because I've done a good amount of research and reading on this, and answer me this: when you are looking at our rates, are we looking at Wellington is higher in cost and fixed rates versus the variable with the usage? From what I've kind of been reading and understanding is having a higher set base rate actually can help guarantee sustainability over time for a water utility, where the variable with usage won't create that stability, and you'll see these huge up and downs of, I'd say, elevator pricing, where, oh crap, we're in trouble, we're going to throw people's rates through the roof, compared to setting the standard base rate a little higher that guarantees a payment of our utility. So are we running off of, as Wellington, we're more reliant on the fixed base rate, or we're more reliant on the volume rate?
Currently, you are fairly reliant on the base charge, the $66 per month. Now, you bring up some great points, because that's exactly the questions and discussion we're having with rate structure alternatives about how does the service charge look? How much do we need to recover from the service charge versus volumetric? And there are some calculations and there's some practices in terms of developing those first. It's not just willy-nilly, like, oh, let's do $10 in the service charge and $5 volume charge.
Right.
There's an allocation process associated with that. And we have to weigh the revenue stability versus maybe wise use of water with a tiered structure and all those sorts of things. And some of those are in conflict with one another. And that's the balance. And that's kind of that's what we're looking at. That's what the stakeholder group has been charged with doing is we come back with alternatives and they look at those and we kind of talk through them and either dissect them a little bit, maybe merge them together to achieve more revenue stability or that wise use of water pricing signal.
Got it. And also, do we account for depreciation in our water? Do you know if that's in there?
From an accounting perspective, no, but from a financial planning perspective, traditionally, and we'll probably be looking at this in the financial plan, we're not to that part yet, but typically in a financial plan, there would be some ongoing repair and replacement costs for replacing mains, repairing mains, that sort of thing. And the idea is that you'd like to have that at least be equal to depreciation with the notion that, depreciation represents the loss of value. And we know that's, they still might be in service, but we try to replicate that or have a line item in the capital improvement program. And that usually also comes out of a master plan, that sort of thing. But we are incorporating some level of repair and replacement to recognize depreciation in the system.
Got it. Did we do that now? Did you say no?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, perfect. And one of the other questions I had is when we're looking at ensuring, like they call it equality in rates among classes.
Mhm.
So, and that would be the irrigation, residential, commercial classes. So when you're looking at that and we're looking at residential, I've done some reading on some programs that affordable housing has set up where they actually decrease the rate with developers that are working with bringing affordable housing into areas where families can actually sustain on lower income, seniors, single parents, families that have the lower income brackets. Is that something you guys are including in your plans for this?
Well, that's one of the pricing objectives is the essential use pricing. So for that just essential water use for just living, looking at pricing that the lowest possible cost to provide that benefit to those customers that might be disadvantaged or on a fixed income or whatever the case may be. So again, that's a pricing objectives, and based on some of the feedback we've got, we'll be incorporating some of that into the rate structure alternatives. Yeah.
Got it. That's all I had.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear, excuse me, I'm glad to hear that you're going to bring some different alternatives to us here. I know with me and my wife just being there alone, just kind of like what your brother is, we pay a heck of a lot of money every month. If I was retired on a fixed income, it would be a killer right now. But I don't know if we should be shoving at all the extras to big families either, because right now with the inflation that we got, with food, gas, everything else, we can't break our families either. So we definitely got to weigh that out. We got to see a lot of different alternatives.
It's a delicate balance.
I would like to say thank you for working with us in the town and giving us options, because that's what we need, and we'll move forward with them when you come.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And we'll see you in September.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the consent agenda consists of minutes of June 14th, 2022, Board of Trustees meeting, the minutes of January 19th, 2022, Board of Trustees special meeting, resolution number 27-2022, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the town of Wellington making appointments to the Wellington Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and a contract for testing or materials testing and inspection of the water treatment plant expansion project. Can I get a motion to approve?
Just had a quick question as to, were these January 19th minutes never approved before? Is that why they're in front of it? Okay.
We apologize. It was discovered. We are making correct.
Motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
May I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes. All right, on to the action items. Our first action item is the Wellington Senior Resource Center annual contract renewal. Ms. Jones.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Mayor. My name is Jenny Jones, and I'm the Public Works Program Administrator. And I also currently serve as the Town Liaison for the Senior Center. With me, I have Dorothy McClure, who serves as the Senior Program Director. Tonight, we just have our standard annual contract renewal. This has been ongoing for probably before my time. So typically, the town provides all fuel, registration, maintenance, as well as the use of and what a little bit.
Wellington and provide o'clock till 1 o'clock. Wednesdays, we have a 5-piece band that comes, that's been coming for the last, I think about 15 years and provides music. So we usually have a pretty good sized crowd on Wednesdays. Monday and Friday, we get together and just visit, play cards, talk and that. We schedule several outings a month to surrounding areas for restaurants for lunch or tours of interesting places. We also schedule potlucks and mountain pickups. Oh, gee, mountain picnics during the months for our members. Our members have served the community of Wellington by helping with recent fishing derby and the bike safety derby. We help the local food bank and replace flyers in the food bank boxes that promote the senior center and the bus transportation to be handed out. And we think we've gotten a few more people using the bus because of that. The senior bus is used to transport seniors to and from Fort Collins for medical related appointments. And it runs Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Our membership, well, it also brings seniors to the center for meals and special events if they are unable to drive themselves. Our membership fee is $15 a person for the year. And our membership in 2022 was 89 seniors. And of that, 27 were new members, which kind of goes along with the growth in Wellington. The Senior Center provides social opportunities for our senior community. The second Wednesday of the month, the Sheriff's Department, Fire Department, and sometimes the town administrators meet with our seniors to provide a question and answer session as to what's going on and what we need to be aware of in the community. We bring in outside speakers to tell us about senior related topics to keep us informed. We hold 2 fundraisers yearly, one in the spring in connection with the townwide yard sale and one in December for Christmas. Larimer County Office on Aging gives the senior center grant money, which we use to pay for potlucks, lunch on outings sometimes, theater tickets, cookies and coffee for the senior center. And in closing, I want to thank you for your support of the senior center in the past and hope that you see fit to continue supporting us in the future. The Senior Center provides vital support to the area seniors by providing a gathering place to share with friends, a welcoming place to obtain information regarding senior issues, and stimulating fun and educational outings. Do you have any questions?
How much do you anticipate that you'll be over budget due to the additional cost of fuel for the year?
I'm sorry, what?
How much do you anticipate that it will cost you additionally in fuel costs for the year to be able to provide the minimal services that you do?
I would guess around 3,000. So there was also a budgeting glitch. So last year when we were kind of in the budgeting process, the number I gave to our current finance director was 9,200, which would have given us a little bit of a cushion. And unfortunately, she put in 6 and did not change that. So couple that with the gas costs, I guess probably about $3,500 more dollars. We don't anticipate any unexpected services. They did get the grant successfully to purchase that new van. So I will be working with Dorothy this year in the upcoming months to work on selling the old vehicle just to maximize. We use the government deals platform, which should generate probably a good 10,000 more for their program by assisting them with that. So yeah.
Well, if we can find a way to help offset that cost, that certainly isn't something that the seniors could have anticipated. when they were
Absolutely.
planning Their budget. So
Yeah.
if we can find a way to dig deep somewhere, maybe in that outreach. and
Definitely. And
discussion.
I plan on working with Charity, our new finance director, to see if we can kind of find a way to find some funds just to make sure we're covered for that.
And thank you so much for sharing what we have done well to serve the seniors in the Wellington community over the last few years. Can you
Quite a
share
few
with
years.
us? Yeah. Can you share with us, is there anything that we can do now to help better support our senior community?
One thing that I would like to see happen is a larger facility for the senior center. And I think the library needs a larger facility for their service to the community. And I think the library would be a perfect place for the senior center to move into. It would give us more space. We could have pool table for the guys and exercise room. We could offer so much more for the seniors if we had more room that was specifically ours and not shared with the community.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that information. And thank you
You
so
bet.
much for everything that our senior community does contribute. It's been very important and very passionate group of people. And thank you for everything that you do. And it's important that we continue to support people as they age and they go through different cycles in their life in the community, whether it's becoming senior citizens or providing different types of housing for our children so that they come back home once they leave school. So thank you so much for your presentation this evening. It was very, very valuable.
Well, thank you for hearing me.
And are there any questions on the funding I proposed for this upcoming contract year? I did include an increase for the fuel and maintenance in the event that the gas prices continue at the rate that they are. The insurance premiums did increase a little bit as well. So you'll see that the cost is a few thousand more this year.
But if we're able to sell the old
Mhm.
bus, that will decrease the
Yes.
insurance.
Yeah, so I did have a question on that because I know we've been in the process of trying to get together a pilot program with the Hispanic community and other members to do. I know we were talking about utilizing that bus for about 4 to 8 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks roughly. Would that be a problem to maintain the bus for that couple of months? Obviously, we're paying the insurance already as the town. Would that be problematic so that we can actually, we finally got the funding together for the pilot program. Do you see any problem with not trying to sell that van immediately so that we have that opportunity to try that pilot program out?
I think so for Dorothy, I know their kind of process and I'll obviously let you speak to it as well. So for her, that's something she'd want to take back to her board and just confirm with them and make sure they're all comfortable with that and kind of the delay.
Yeah, because that is eliminating summer months, which is when we thought the bus would have the most
Interest.
interest in purchasing it, would be for camps and churches and that, which that could delay selling it more. But I would have to take it before my board.
Okay. And I guess that's just kind of a thought process for me. And I do appreciate the partnership we've had with the senior center. We do invest quite a bit into that, and you guys give a lot back, and I appreciate that. I know this is something that we've been working on, and it's taken time to get the funding together. We're trying to see if there are other vehicles available for this, but this is kind of an opportunity where I see that as there's a need that the town has, where the senior center could maybe step back and say, hey, we're willing to work through whatever that is to work with the town.
Well, we'd be willing to sell you the bus.
And that might be, and that could very well be the case. That's part of the reason we're doing a pilot, is to see if there's enough need that it makes sense. And that could very well be the thing, that if we do the pilot, there's a lot of need for that. The discussion could then be like, hey, this makes perfect sense. Why don't we buy the bus that we've already been using? And that is kind of my thought process.
This
on that.
pilot program you have, does that correspond or interfere with the one we do with the medical related appointments?
No, it would not. So it would be a separate, basically the way the program is designed to work is it'll be 2 trips, 2 days a week. We'll have a trip down to North Fort Collins. We'll be dropping people off at the basically North bus station in North Fort Collins. We worked out with Fort Collins, we can drop off there. So we'll pick people up in Wellington, drop them off in Fort Collins. If they want to come back, we'll bring them back up, and then we'll go back in the afternoon and pick them up. And then we'll do that 2 days a week, and basically see if there's a need. Because what we're trying to do is it's a proof of concept. We've heard from a lot of members of the community, we need to have some form of connection to North Fort Collins. And right now there's no data to actually go to Fort Collins and say whether it's we run our own or whether we help them expand up here. Right now there's nothing to show that there's a need for that. And so the goal of this is to see, is there that need? So this would be utilizing the old bus. It wouldn't interfere with what you guys are doing with your bus. Your seniors would be welcome to take advantage of it. There's not going to be any charge for it when we do the pilot, so anyone can ride it for free. And then obviously if it works well, then the board would have to reconsider, okay, are we willing to fund ongoing putting something together? And that's where we get into discussions on, if the board chooses to say we're going to fund a program like this, then we would be having discussions. Do we purchase the senior bus since it's already here? Do we need a different vehicle? Do we work with Fort Collins? So there's a whole lot of other conversations that happen at that point.
And I can coordinate with Dorothy. I'll let her talk to her board. They have an upcoming board meeting with the new month, and I'll let her talk to the board about it. And then I can reach out to you and follow up with you, and CC Patti as well, so she's in the loop.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
So
Any other questions on topic?
well, this is kind of, to me, it's relevant because that would be an area that if we're not able to utilize that resource that we're currently paying the insurance and fuel and maintenance for, then we have to figure out how to do something else with that. And so what might make sense is to, from my standpoint, is wait to hear back from their board if that's something they're willing to work with us on. And then if they're good, then great, we move forward. If they would prefer to just sell the vehicle right away, do we need to then revisit? Do we need to make adjustments to the contract at that point?
And I understand kind of what John is saying, just because of the fact, since this has already been set up and established, there's people interested. I've personally had people reach out to me and trying to find out when this project was going to kick off. If we have to get another vehicle and pay for that insurance, that's an additional cost to us as a town. So I think it's smart to know what we're doing beforehand, because is that something where we just drop insurance on one and that one stays parked so we can fund this other one that we might have to possibly rent to do this pilot program. So I understand the concern there, because then we're going to be pulling more funds to be able to do the transportation aspect of everything. The other thing is I am an avid shopper. Most of my kitchen towels and rags come from your guys' craft fairs at Christmas. So I am extremely grateful, all of my scrubbies in my house. So I enjoy the program. I think one of the other things is knowing that even me personally, I would love to sponsor some seniors and help with all of the costs as far as membership goes. I think a lot of people would probably step up and help with all of those membership fees, so seniors can just enjoy this at no cost. So $15 might not be a lot to me, but to seniors on a budget, that is a lot. That's groceries for a week, you know? And so I think that's huge to not have to have you as seniors incur those costs. So I'm definitely interested in hearing more about the senior center and what we can do as far as helping.
Okay.
Appreciate what you guys do over there. I might have a little conflict of interest here, but you know, the seniors have so much that they could be given back to. I mean, they got so much talent that they could give back to the community. And we got to embrace them as much as we can. And I actually probably try to expand some of the things that they can do here in town too. I mean, make them feel like they're more part of the community that way. So I think we could work the senior center to really be a benefit to the town.
We're all for that.
Yeah, I think you guys are great. Yeah, I love the craft fair. Obviously, doing the fishing derby, all that good stuff. You guys are an important part of the community, and we need to support you every way that we can. And I'm all for it. You have any questions, Mason? Trustee? Mason,
No, I would
sorry.
just echo Trustee Gator's remarks. If we could, partner with you guys to get the transportation pilot program through, I think that would be really beneficial. But otherwise, you guys are doing a great job, and thank you.
You guys. Are there any comments from the public regarding this agenda item? Going once, twice, sold 3 times. Okay. Can I get a motion and a second on this agenda item?
I had to, I don't know if we are going to have opportunity for further comment.
After the motion?
Well, my comment is regards to, are we have any urgent deadlines that have to be met? Do we have to sign the contract today? Is something bad going to happen if we delay this a month?
So this does align with the county contribution, so that's why it is kind of critical. The cutoff typically is the beginning of July, so July 1st, June 30th.
Okay.
Our contract with Office on Aging runs from the 1st
Okay.
of July
Mhm.
through the end of June.
Okay. So are we able to make adjustments? Because where my concern is because we haven't heard from their board about the use of the van, and I understand you can't make that decision on your own.
No,
We're putting aside $2,000 for insuring that old van. And I would prefer that if we have to sign the contract today, can we leave that portion out at this point and then re-add it if needed? If we come to an agreement.
So
on-
that the insurance premium doesn't align with this, so that actually was paid in full at the beginning of the year. So we're already paid in full for this calendar year through the end of the year. And essentially, I think if there's a few more months and then they sell it, or, we don't continue with the pilot program, then we would get a refund check of the difference. So we would get money back, but that is already paid. That was at the beginning of the year.
Got it.
And we obviously want it covered for 4th of July because we will be using the senior van for shuttle service for the 4th of July.
So can we get a motion on this and then comment?
I'll make a motion to approve the Welling Senior Resource Annual Contract Renewal.
Second?
I'll second.
May I get a roll call? Or I don't do a roll call on that, do I? All right. Are there any final comments from the board? Trustee Gator, anything further?
So I guess kind of the same thing that continues, and it's good to hear that we've already paid the insurance for the year, so that may or may not be relevant. But my hope is really that we can partner together on helping with one of the things that we're working on in the town. That was my biggest concern, is I didn't realize that my understanding was prior that the insurance ran out in June. And that it was only
Yeah.
paid through June. I didn't realize that, because that's what I was told previously. So I was under the impression that we were renewing that insurance for another year at this point. So if that's not the case, so that is not the case. So
It is paid in full.
it is paid in
And
full. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be
And we're
happy.
not signing a new contract to insure it for another year from today. Okay.
Nope, the intent was to work with Dorothy to help sell that by the end of the year. They
Okay.
do have an ideal reserve price. So it indeed may take a few months to actually sell the vehicle, just so we try and get them the most money that they'd like to get for that vehicle. So it may be, October, November, and we're still trying to sell it.
Sure. No further comments.
Would it be of benefit if one of our trustees came and spoke about the transportation initiative with the board? Would that be of benefit?
yes, I do. That would be
Okay,
a
when
good
is,
idea.
when is your next meeting?
I believe it is the be the Friday.
Is it July 8th?
No.
The first, we have your
It's
calendar if we
6th.
need to grab it.
Jenny, you're
It
welcome
should-
to send an email out if you want. Trustee Gator, since you headed up the transportation, will you be comfortable?
So what I'll do is I'll also see if I can get Adriana and Betty, if they're available, because they're the two that have been working with Miss Garcia and myself to put this
Mhm.
together. And Betty actually secured a grant from a nonprofit for $1,000. That's how we're funding it. So we're not even having to use taxpayer dollars. So that's why we're excited to get it moving, because our community has come together to find ways to fund that. So I'd be happy if you can get the date to Jenny.
It's the 8th.
the 8th? Okay.
Yeah, I think
which
it
is
is. We
Friday.
actually have her calendars back here, so we
Perfect.
can double check
Yes,
that.
so, and I will plan to be there, and like I said, I'll see if I can get Betty and Adriana come, and we'd be happy to speak and answer questions for the board.
That would be good.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You-
Do you have a comment? Okay. Hearing no further comments, can I get a roll call on the motion?
Trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Gator,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes. All right, our last action item is the authorization of a purchase for Parks truck, Mr. Campos.
Sorry, just getting everything set up here. Good evening, Board of Trustees and Mayor. My name is Dean Campos, the Parks and Recreation Manager for the town of Wellington. As you know, our park staff roughly maintain about 80 acres of grass and open space, as well as 10 play structures. 2 of those staff members are park technicians and are dedicated to mowing 40 acres each while hauling the equipment needed to be as effective as possible. Excuse me. Early this year, one of our parks trucks became non-operational with over 180,000 miles on it. And we essentially ran it till the end of its lifespan. If we can get this truck to pass emissions, the next step is to make sure it's consistently operational, which has been a challenge. Also, the truck has consistently had the check engine light appear at least once a month since January of 2022. The truck is vital in order to maintain our parks and trails consistently. Currently in our 2022 CIP budget, we have funds for a new truck that was approved for $30,000. The truck that is needed should have a minimum of 2,500 horsepower, which has the ability to haul a large trailer, 2 mowers, 1 mower for large open spaces, and 1 for small areas like treescapes. This is important because it allows the park technician to complete 1 area efficiently using 2 mowers for different terrain, 1 to move to the next area without requesting support and or traveling back to the shop to switch out equipment. After we put our proposal on Sourcewell, which is an agency that helps support local government agencies to acquire the lowest price available for this type of truck came to $31,546 at Dellenbach Motors. This truck, a Chevrolet Silverado 2500, usually is priced at $47,450 based upon the manufacturer's suggested retail price. Based upon Sourcewell's bid, we can acquire this vehicle for about $15,000 less than MSRP. I'm requesting approval to purchase the truck for the additional $1,546 for a grand total of $31,546. The purchase of this truck will help to ensure our park staff can effectively execute their workload on a weekly basis in a timely manner. The truck bid is also in your packets as well. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Trustee Mason.
That's an absolutely fabulous price for a 2500 HD. That's killer. As far as there's like one option on here as far as the tubular steps go for 775. I don't know if that's totally necessary for you guys or how, whether we could roll that off, but either way, doesn't, $775.
You avoid rolling your ankle, getting hurt, getting workman's comp.
Fair point.
Trustee Gator.
Yeah, so I just had a question, and thank you for answering. You answered a lot of the questions I shared with Patty yesterday, so thank you.
Gotcha, no
Um,
problem.
With the truck that we have there, definitely, I mean, I understand how, I used to work for dealerships, so I understand how MSRP and all that works, so that is a good price on that. The question I had is in terms of the options, because there are several different options to go with on the 2500s. Where are we at on that? Is this, it's been a while since I've dealt with that. Are we looking at a mid-range option, a top of the end option, or is this the bottom of the barrel option that we have?
The work truck.
Yeah, it's a work truck. I'd have to follow up with the superintendent of public works. He's the one who works through the fleet and has helped with this whole process. But I can definitely follow up on that to get you the information needed.
So when you
Yeah,
say
my understanding of like the work truck, like vinyl flooring, crank windows, I mean, bare minimum.
okay, I just wanted to make sure that, because again, it's not much over budget. And again, it's a good price, but still, if we're going over budget, I want to make sure that we're not paying for things that we don't need. So, and thank you for answering, because that was one of the questions I had is, could we use a smaller truck? So thank you for answering why we need the large truck. Appreciate it.
Good question. Trustees.
I purchase fleet vehicles for our company, so I'm kind of jealous. It is an amazing price. But no, so the only thing I want to verify is all of the town of Wellington trucks, they are not used for personal business. They are only used for town business, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Anything for parks and recreation. So example of that, mowing any of our parks, any of the special events that we have, being able to haul equipment there and back, but nothing for personal use and taking anything home or anything like that.
Sounds like a heck of a purchase there. And curious, what are you doing with the old truck? Going to be selling it outright or what?
Yeah, from what I understand, and I have to double check with our public works superintendent, but I believe we do sell the old trucks.
What
to
year
see-
is it?
I'm sorry,
What year was the old one?
what year? 2006.
Trying to buy it.
2000? No, I'm not trying, just seeing what the value of that is. I mean, it's still probably worth in today's market, what, maybe 10,000 or so, or?
I couldn't tell you. It's
No.
in pretty rough shape, but hopefully
Right.
to get as much as we can for
Right.
it, for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to get much out of a truck anymore. Right.
It's true.
Okay.
No, yeah, smoking price. Pretty amazing that it didn't go up that much with inflation. Yeah, good deal. I like it. Any comments from the public on this agenda item? Okay, can I get a motion and a second on this agenda item?
Make a motion to authorize the purchase of the Parks truck in an amount to not exceed $31,546. Is that correct with the additional funding?
That is correct.
There you go.
Second.
May I get a roll call? Oh, wait, further board comment. Why do I keep doing that?
So
Because it's new.
Yeah. When we sell the truck, do those funds go back into where we took that extra from? I'm assuming that's in the CIP. What happens with those funds when we sell the truck?
I'd have to follow up because this is the first since I've been here, which is going to be coming up on 2 years in October. So still pretty new to the processes. I can follow up with that and be able to get you that information.
I think charities coming to the rescue.
There you go.
Those funds go directly back into the line item that we use to purchase the truck.
Great.
Perfect.
So in essence, if we're able to sell the truck by the end of the year for more than $1,546, we will have made up our
Way
difference.
money ahead.
Yeah.
Perfect.
How many miles does that have on it? 180, you said?
187,000. Yeah.
Is it what, a GMC or what?
I believe.
I'm just wondering, I mean, the
Yeah.
value of it.
I
It
think
should-
it's a GMC. Don't
Should be
quote me.
way more than 50 or 1,100 and whatever.
Yeah.
Probably right, about maybe 5, maybe.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Awesome. Hearing no further comments, may I get a roll call on this motion?
Trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald. Yes. Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Are there any reports from the town attorney?
Thought I would answer Mr. Westfall's question from public comment real fast. The
Perfect.
maximum fine for a violation of fireworks ordinance in the town of Wellington per our town code is $1,000. Currently, the presumptive fine for a first offense per our municipal judge is $500, and she and I will be talking about that over the next month.
Thank you.
The next court date is early August, so it'll be more than a month before we have court.
Thank you. Anything, Ms. Garcia, anything to report?
So I'd like to follow up with one of Mr. Westfall's questions as well about the water restriction signs. We have all that we have out already. I requested that we order more and get them out as soon as possible. So I do apologize. It sounds like we're maybe deficient in the number of signs that we have, but we will get some more out and available so that's across the community as soon as we can. I believe Sergeant Cherry will be talking to you a little bit about fire restrictions when he comes up. So I didn't want to have him miss his opportunity to speak tonight. And thank you for allowing me to go to the Colorado Municipal League Conference with y'all. It was a great conference. I heard it was the best attended conference that they've ever had. And there was some really great speakers. I know the trustees will want to be giving some updates on what they learned up there. So I don't want to steal any thunder, and I will send you out a separate report afterwards.
Thank you. Are there any reports from staff? No. Okay.
Yes, Sergeant Cherry.
Sergeant Sherry.
Quick before they call you away. All that go to? Little joke. Hello, how are you? Just a quick recap on May for our monthly report. May was a pretty busy month we'll just talk about staffing for our deputies. Our deputies went to a lot of training in the month of May, and there was some vacation. So there were times where we only had one deputy on the street, unless I was on the street with them. So we had a little less activity than I would hope for, traffic stops and some of those extra patrols and some of the extra things that are going on. The one thing that caught my attention, at least in some of the stats, were thefts in the town. That caught my attention. So I kind of jumped into some of those calls to figure out what happened. Sometimes when a citizen calls in and they says, hey, I want to report a theft of a widget. We call that person back and to figure out what happened with the theft of this widget. And we don't get an answer. We leave a message for that person and then they don't call us back right away. So the call disappears until this person calls back. As soon as they call back again, it enters in a new call for service. Okay. And that happened 5 times in the month of May. So that ended up upping our stats a little bit as far as thefts go. It wasn't anything serious. We had a stolen cell phone. She thought maybe somebody else had it. Somebody had a pair of sandals that were stolen from her driveway. Just some little things that didn't give me a ton of concern, but I'm not seeing any drastic changes in any of our numbers where I'm like, oh my gosh, we had this major crime wave occurring. Vehicle trespasses, there were none in the month of May. All of a sudden we're seeing a spike. And all of it seems to be enough without getting into June numbers already. We're already seeing 6 in the month of June, and they're all centered right here in the center of town. They're not expanding anywhere else. Fortunately, we're not seeing a whole lot of other vehicle thefts. And some of these vehicle trespasses are people are just leaving their doors unlocked. We had a couple of vehicles that were actually physically broken into, a broken window where a woman's bag with camera equipment was stolen. I reached out to our press information officer today. We want to try to get some more information out to the folks, just saying, hey, don't forget to lock your vehicles. Don't leave firearms in the vehicle. It shocks me every time I see vehicles get stolen and somebody had a firearm tucked underneath the seat or something like that. And some additional tips just to kind of get the information out. So that helps us. People are just keeping stuff locked. Most of the time, bad guys don't want to go around and break windows unless they see something of value on the seat, and then it just becomes a little more tempting for that person. As I said, a lot of our deputies were attending some really good training. They went to a street crimes seminar, which got into confidential informants, developing all kinds of different contexts in the town, officer safety, surviving officer ambushes and those types of things. So it's pretty good. A couple of our people went to an advanced SWAT school. They do that every year with our SWAT team. So a couple of them had to, or was able to go to that. And then I'm trying to get all of my deputies to what's called a crisis intervention team training. And that's just dealing with people that are in crisis. I've got most of my crew up here through that course. It's a week-long course. It's very in-depth. It's absolutely exhausting for some of our deputies to go through it. But it's a huge benefit, especially just learning how to talk to people. Any questions about May before I get into fireworks? And I have to suddenly get a quick call on the radio that makes me have to run out of the room. I'm kidding. Questions about May?
I did have a question. Thank you for answering on the theft, and I appreciate that you doing that. The one other area I noticed that was up significantly was alarm calls. I know when I chatted with you earlier, I know there was a lot of stuff with the high school. I don't know if that factors into those alarm calls or if there's a, because we saw almost doubled. Went from, or sorry, not doubled. Our average was about 7, but 2021 we had 12, we had 16. So did you know kind of what was going on with that?
Yeah, we've had some people that have installed new alarm systems, and when they install a new alarm system, sometimes it takes some tweaking to get it just right. I know myself, I've been to several alarms where we went around, checked doors, and nobody was home, those types of things. Hopefully, we have spoken to these people enough that they can tweak the alarm just right, that we don't get all of these false alarms. We're not getting anything, any alarms that we're responding to where there was an obvious burglary. We never get the phone calls back saying, hey, somebody made an unlawful entry into my house. It's usually some sort of false alarm, or we've had some employees that will type in the alarm code incorrectly, and then we'll get those. Okay.
I have a question
ma'am.
really quick. So you were saying that a lot of the thefts are happening down in the main corridor here. I'm assuming around Cleveland, Roosevelt, all those areas downtown.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you kind of give an attribute? I know that a few residents have spoken to me previously saying that there's no street lights on a lot of the streets in downtown. Do you think that having the no street lights assists in those robberies because people can't see, or would you see just as much in a neighborhood that's well lit?
My experience with these vehicle trespasses, and a vehicle trespass is just a vehicle that someone unlawfully enters into. Does that make sense? Streetlights, of course, bad guys don't want to go where it's well lit. And we have a lot of very dark streets. I live on one of them where you could do anything on that street and nobody's going to see you. We're finding out a lot of these vehicle trespasses are after 2:30 in the morning, and they're in the wee hours of the morning when our normal shift goes home. And so we rely on our midnight deputies to come up and patrol the streets during those times. I've already spoken with several of the sergeants that work on our swing shift and midnight shifts that work, I see in the valley, but outside of Wellington, and said, hey, I need you guys get up here and do a little bit more patrols after our swing shift deputy goes home. I'm also going to be working with our swing shift deputies. I'm not a big fan of just forcing somebody to change hours, but even just taking our power shift and our swing shift and moving them up 2 hours so that our power shift is getting off at about 2 in the morning, and our swing shift deputy is getting off about 4:30 in the morning. I think that's gonna help a little bit to just kind of shake things up on the street. Our experience, and at least some of the information that we've gathered so far, is that these are kids.
Yeah.
These are teenagers walking around. I mean, occasionally we have somebody that comes in from out of town. We have some of those folks, but typically these are going to be teenagers walking around the town in the middle of the night. And I'm also looking at back in the day when I was a deputy working up here, we'd had special project nights, getting the bikes out, changing it up so that we're coming in, a group of us reserve deputies coming in at midnight and working until 4 or 5 in the morning, and doing that infrequently so that it's not this, so they expect it, they won't expect it. And we found that was hugely effective in curbing all the vehicle trespasses. Once they figure it out that we're going to turn the corner, or we could turn the corner any second, then it stopped and they stayed home.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And thank you, because it looks like it was only a 47 call difference, and you said you were really short-staffed, and those were officer initiated. So you guys still put in the effort even though you were shorthanded. So I
Our-
appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. Our deputies are doing a lot of self-initiated activity out there. June, I'm already looking at some of those numbers, and those are way up in some of the traffic stops, and our guys are just doing phenomenal work, catching bad guys, people with warrants, and a lot of people with warrants. I don't know why.
Noticed that lately.
And doing some really good drug interdiction.
Are we having a spike on the warrants? Are they coming from out of town or what?
I think it's just the criminal justice system is just kind of weird right now. So there's a lot of people that are failing to appear in court when they're told to appear in court. I know of one
Are they
citizen.
local residents though? Kinda?
Some are, some aren't. I know one specifically, she has like 4 misdemeanor warrants now because she failed to appear in court on various crimes, and she's going to get more felony warrants here pretty darn soon. So our deputies are exceptional at finding these people. So, and that's why you're seeing an increase in the warrant arrests. So even when we're not looking for that person, we found that here recently, we just stumbled upon somebody and, oh, you have a warrant for your arrest.
That's what we had been reading. It was like happenstance that you're like, yep, so awesome. Well, I'm appreciative. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. Fireworks. I'm not entirely sure. Was there something specific you wanted me to talk about with fireworks?
So so Larimer County will go into fire restrictions as of noon tomorrow. Sounds like Berthoud is not adopting or following the fire restriction recommendation. From what we know, the town of Wellington has not adopted or followed those in the past. From what we know, there are no Weld County restrictions to date. I just wanted to make sure you knew that the fire restrictions were coming up. If the Board of Trustees would like us to follow those fire restrictions, we can do so, or I believe we just opt out.
And you have that option. I did speak with Emergency Services today. You couldn't recall the town ever adopting any fire restrictions. It's going to be up to the town. It's up to each municipality whether or not they want to adopt those. Of course, I think, and maybe our town attorney can help me out with this, but if we start to adopt those, then we have to kind of go to the county then, and that might be problematic for the town. So the fireworks, obviously, you know, because you voted on it. July 2nd, the permissible fireworks will be allowed. Dr. Westfall spoke to one of my deputies. I think the information that got to him may have been incorrect. It's just as far as staffing for the 4th of July. We're going to be tripling our deputies that are on the street. We only had 2 deputies on the street last year. Those deputies end up getting tied into other disturbances, a drunk guy that had a warrant and some other things. We're going to have at least 4 full-time deputies, including myself, that are going to be out working the fireworks and some reserves, 2, maybe 3 reserve deputies that are going to be out. I can't promise you that we're going to go to every single fireworks call because I just don't know. I don't have a crystal ball to know, what's going to happen. We may get some sort of big disturbance or some thing that bogs us down a little bit. But we're going to try to go to as many of these calls as we possibly can. And my expectation of our deputies, this is how I've communicated it, is that enforcement is preferred without any verbal warnings and those types of things. And I'm working on some of the logistics of that as we speak. Any questions regarding that?
I do have one question on
Yes,
that. Does video count as an eyewitness? So if someone is recording someone lighting off the huge mortar shells or airborne that shoot for 10 minutes, does a video recording count as something that can hold up in court?
Sure, I suppose it depends on what the video is, how clear it is, how far away the video is. Obviously, I have to talk to our town attorney about the admissibility of those types of things.
Absolutely.
So I love video. If I get it on a Ring doorbell or somebody's house camera, hey, that's great. And we can certainly talk to those people. We have methods of capturing that video by someone just sending the video to one of our links, our online links, and it stores it in our evidence.
The question I had, I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways. One of the concerns that we had before with going on to further enforcement was dealing with evidence. So if you guys collected fireworks, there was concern that deputies were going to have to leave Wellington to go into Fort Collins. I believe there was some options that we were looking at to address that. Could you speak to that?
Sure, absolutely. So typically in years past, anytime we seized any fireworks as related to, or as evidence, or if it was just, hey, look, there's a fireworks call on the radio right now. Just happens. We would have to take these items, whether again, it was evidence as related to why somebody was charged, or it was just seized property for destruction because we couldn't establish any probable cause to charge somebody. We would have to take these things and drive them all the way to Fort Collins to put them into a gigantic metal bin outside so that we don't blow up our administration office. What we've done to try to mitigate that, at least those types of runs, is I work with our fleet services. They have a gigantic metal box. I don't know that it's going to be big enough, but it's something that we can secure it in at least temporarily. So all we have to do is go to the substation, put these items into this metal bin, and then we're back on the street and kind of repeating that process a little bit. Obviously, once this metal box gets too full, then it starts becoming dangerous. I don't know that any of my deputies rolling around with a bunch of explosives in their vehicles. Then they can drive all the way down to Fort Collins and transfer these items over to that other metal box.
Is it just a big job site box that's metal and locks, or is it like an
That's-
explosive?
It is not an explosive box. It's essentially a job site box,
Got it.
but it's locked. We can lock it. It'll be safe. We're going to use the substation for that purpose. And we've already spoken to the fire department. They said they're good with that.
And you had the box donated, they are gonna be able to bring it?
The question was, it was an additional cost for something that it would only get used once a year. And I was opposed to asking the town for something like that. And then if we bought it, what are we going to do with it, for the rest of the year? And so we got with our fleet services, and they have a large metal box that we can use. It's not ideal, at least for my purposes, but I can lock it, make sure it's secure. I think it'll hold a good deal. It's just going to depend on how much we seize in one night. So
At least this gives us the option
it does. Yes.
without taking people away to Fort Collins. So good place to start.
Yes, sir. Any other questions regarding fireworks?
No.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Board of Trustees planning calendar. That's just for us.
It's just for
That's
you.
just for
It's in
us?
the
I got
packet.
one
Perfect.
quick question,
FYI.
if you don't mind. On the fireworks, did we have anything that we're notifying the citizens that we are going to start enforcing it a little bit more?
Question is whether or not. we
Sorry
put
about
any-
that.
Question was whether we put any additional information out. I contacted our press information officer, and I know that the town has been putting some information out. The information that got put out through the county onto the Wellington Squad's Facebook page was that there was a change in the ordinance, but that there was no additional enforcement. In fact, it's funny that you asked, because I sent an email to my press information officer this morning to ask her to add that additional information and the contact information, not to try to knock on our door at the substation or call on the substation phone, but to contact our non-emergency line. If they're able to do that, then they can get the information into the system as quickly as possible. They know where all of our deputies are at any one time, those types of things. But yes.
And we will be pushing information out on a regular basis. So thank you for asking.
Are we going to make sure that our information includes that there is going to be heightened enforcement this year? Will that be included in the information?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I did ask for that additional information. Our press information officer was holding off until they figured out what the county was going to do with fire restrictions. They didn't want to put too much information out there
Yeah.
without knowing what the restrictions were going to be.
Makes sense. Any reports from the board? Start with Trustee Gator.
Yes. So first off, we are finally at the point where we're almost ready to move forward with the transportation pilot program. We've been working on that, gosh, 6 months on that one specific thing. There's been meetings around this for a year. So Betty, so it basically started out with Betty, Adriana, myself, and then Patti. And then we brought, I'm mixing up my mayors now, Mayor Hammond in, and then the county commissioners joined us for a meeting with the Hispanic community. That's kind of how this all started. And so as we've kind of worked through that, Patti was able to make arrangements with Fort Collins to allow us to, once we got it finalized, to drop off at the northern bus stop in Fort Collins. We were going to utilize the senior center bus, the old bus, because they received the new bus to utilize. So the old bus was available. And then we were working on funding, because that was one of the big things that I said, we're not taking this out of the town's pocketbook. I'll help fund it. We've got other people who are willing to step up and fund it. And so Betty, just this last week, let us know that she was able to find an organization who is willing to put $1,000 down, which roughly should cover the first 2 months what we're anticipating of the costs. So we're looking forward to that. That obviously has been a little bit of the wrench with determining whether we're going to have access to the senior center bus. I've reached out to the county commissioners and to Poudre School District to see if there's a possibility of using vehicles. Unfortunately, from Poudre School District, the only people who could drive their vehicles are their employees, so that would complicate things greatly. So we are working to see if there are other options, but obviously the best option would be able to continue to have that use of the senior center bus. And then the goal behind the pilot program is to establish whether there is enough of a need here that this board can then consider, are we willing to start expending town resources on this? Because right now, we don't know how many people would use it. So for us to say, okay, we're going to invest tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to start a program makes no sense. So the goal with the pilot is to put something in place, see how much use we get out of it. We'll be doing 2 days, kind of one day, I think midweek, and the other day will be either be end of the week or weekend that we'll run that. And we'll basically have a trip in the morning and a trip in the afternoon down at North Fort Collins. So I'll keep you posted on that, and hopefully we'll be able to figure out this stuff on that. And then also really have a lot of good information that came out of the CML conference. So I was able to have a lot of good conversations. Very excited about, I was able to speak with the mayor from Salida, who was one of the people who helped us in our quest to get a finance committee together. I was able to have breakfast with him on Thursday morning and talk with him a little bit about, and it was funny because one of the things that he was saying was, I would love to see our finance committee have some level of resident involvement on that. So when I told him, yeah, we got 7 residents on our finance committee, he's like, what? So that was very exciting. And then we actually had our first meeting of the finance committee yesterday, and boy, did we pick the right people. We were just doing introductory stuff, and there were so many great questions that were being asked. So I am very excited about that moving forward. Couple of key things that I took away from CML that I wanted to share. There was a lot of discussion, obviously, coming out of we had a couple of big events. We had the supermarket shooting, and then we also had the fires in Superior. So there was a lot of discussion about emergency preparedness and emergency plan. And a lot of it was, the conversation has not turned from if something happens to us, is it just a matter of when, and do we understand what that process is? So a lot of that was about public works and redundancy and things like that. So I was able to have a good conversation, and because I realized as we're going through these talks, I'm guessing we probably have things in place, but I just don't know what they are. Had a really good meeting yesterday with Patti, Megan, and Bob. Was glad to hear that a lot of the things that they were talking about doing, we are already either in process to, or we've already done. So that's great. I think we still have some more work to do on that, but a lot of it's just making sure that we are prepared for those emergencies. Another thing that was brought up a lot is about community engagement and finding ways to put things together. A lot of the conversations, they talked about the things that we are currently doing. I don't remember if I was talking to Trustee Kinney or somebody else, but I was talking to somebody, and we were like, a lot of these people are talking about these things, and it's like, we do that, and we do that, and we do that. And so it was great. In one of the conversations, I was actually talked to a trustee from, it was the town that spoke last year about the roundtables. So Wheat Ridge, thank you. I was speaking to him in line for food at the event on Thursday night. And so got talking to him, he's from Wheat Ridge. I'm like, we took you guys' idea for the roundtables and it's been a huge success. So it was great to talk to some of these people and be like, hey, we're implementing these ideas. But a lot of it really was focused on how do we drive that higher level of engagement with our residents within what we're doing as the town. And then a lot of it also stemmed around how do we find ways to have, I think he called it courageous conversations, because a lot of times, right, when we're here at the board table, we don't have the opportunity to have a conversation. Right? We have public comment, not public conversation, but really how do we work through some ideas and ways to have more of those conversations in other ways. And that's something we've talked about for years, about how do we engage with people outside of the boardroom. And so I've already had a few conversations with people about some ideas of things we can try to do. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to see some of those move forward. So we've got a lot. We're doing some good things. We've just got to make sure that we see them through. So
I'm still waiting on barbecue.
I know.
No, so really the only thing I have is I was contacted by a resident today whom I did speak with Patti about this a little bit. I understand it's a very sensitive subject, but it's a senior that has until July 18th to get herself out of her home, according to our town. So, and what I would really love is if there is a way that we can figure out how to engage with residents more frequently about all of our ordinances instead of just specific ones. I understand this is a health and safety as well, but it's one of those things where I don't want to be known as that town that's giving people that ultimatum. I want to try and help fix that as much as possible for our seniors.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, do you guys have anything to say on that? Did they get notices? Were they?
That process has been a long running process involving a number of notices to this individual. The town has many steps that it goes through to comply with the International Building Code and the International Property Maintenance Code and other things. So the town takes that particular situation extremely seriously. And we've been trying to work with that resident. So
Perfect. Thank you.
I can tell you town staff has been in contact with this individual for at least 8 times in the last couple of weeks, probably the past 3 weeks. So and I explained to Trustee Teets that this was a very sensitive topic and a little personal for this individual. So
Yeah.
it's really important that we keep that confidentiality and allow them to go through the process and work through the options that we've provided to them.
Perfect. Thank you. Trustee.
Just wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to go to CML. It was a great experience, and I think it was a good team bonding part there. Also, too, we golfed into Wellington Chamber this last weekend, and we didn't come in last, so we did good. So I appreciate it. And she was longest drive till the last person. So she got robbed.
Yeah. So I apologize if I'm messing up the timeline here. Within the last month or so, some of us attended the regional airport expansion down in the Loveland Fort Collins area and met with some of the other electeds and staff members in the area. And that was really eye-opening to see what kind of opportunities that'll provide to Northern Colorado, especially with Amazon coming into Loveland, the travel opportunities and learning about the little Uber plane opportunities that are out there that people are using for plane hopping and traveling. Additionally, the CML, something that I thought was really amazing about CML was the opportunity to bond and build relationships, not just with my fellow board members, but with other elected officials and other municipal staff throughout the state. It was really great to see how Wellington has evolved. We've gone from being a toddler that's crawling to being the leader and the example for other municipalities. So staff has come a really long way, and it's really neat to see that shift at an event like that. One of the most powerful facts that has really stuck with me from CML was during one of the keynote speakers shared about how important it is to make sure you have a balance within your workforce and to not discount people with disabilities because they actually tend to outperform people who are not. So that was really interesting. The chamber golf tournament was a lot of fun. That was really great to be able to do that with Rebecca and Dave. I learned a lot about Rebecca and Dave through that process and about myself too. I love golf. I think I might retire softball and transition. And then last night I had the opportunity to sit with Representative Nagoose and really kind of advocate for the Wellington community and talk about the importance of school resource officers here specifically in Wellington. So I just wanted to thank everybody that had an opportunity to attend CML and participate. I know you can because of extenuating circumstances, but it was so important. And when you come back, you just have this different connection. So it's really awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I won't spend a lot of time on CML. I think it was a great opportunity, though, to bond with the trustees and really get out there and meet some of the other elected officials. Hopefully, we can continue to make that a tradition going forward for this board, because I think it was a very cool opportunity. So to Trustee McDonald's point, the mayor and myself will actually be meeting with PSD Superintendent Brian Kingsley tomorrow to discuss school safety and the school resource officer that we'll be adding. And really, that's all I've got.
Everybody, apologies for my tardiness, but I did want to make sure I attended to share my CML information as well. So as always, I think this is the most important conference that we attend all year. The fact that we had 5 people attend this year instead of just 2 last year is incredible. So I'm really happy. I was really happy to get to spend time with you all. And also I know I made the statement while we were playing, but there are certain people that you can play sports with, and then you just know that they're your people. So it's when you can go out and have fun, nobody gets frustrated, and you guys have a great time, you're encouraging each other. I know that from my team on the chamber, the first annual Chamber of Commerce golf tournament that was also raising funds for the American Legion in town, was an awesome event, and I've definitely built some significant trust in my teammates that I know I could play poorly golf with. So it was great fun. And my daughter was there too, so she had a really great time. That was her first golf experience, and we only almost went into one ditch. So it was good. But on a more serious note for CML, here are some of the takeaways that I had as an overview. I have a million notes, but these are some of the significant ones that were very striking to me. I spent a long time with the police chief for North Glen. And kind of talking about the process and function of having a municipality police force, what that looks like, his experiences, other communities that he works with that have either transitioned or definitely chose not to do that. So I have a lot of insight on that. That wasn't something I was really passionate about learning about, but through the last round of campaigning, it sounded like a lot of people were. So I asked a lot of questions, and it was interesting to hear. Based on everything I heard, I don't think Wellington is approaching that level anytime soon, just based on facilities and actual those kind of things and the upfront costs of it. But regardless of that, I have a lot more background knowledge and some really great resources to reference if we ever do have a lot of questions or want to know. And he recommended some other communities and contacts as well. A couple other items that we had outside of just general leadership, community, and those building opportunities. Some of the statistics that really resonated with me, we might be a little behind the curve on this, but in general, communities, 15% of those are disabled in one way or another. And in 2030, 20% of our population will be over the age of 65. I'm not comparing, those are just 2 community statistics. Those were not related in any way, but just to get kind of an overall picture of what Wellington might look like. There's a livability index that's on the AARP website. We currently score 49%. which they said wasn't bad. But when I was looking at the specific ratings according to services, transportation, housing, and those kind of things, it's not good. So I think that might be something that we need to get ahead of. We are primarily right now a community of families where the adults are in their 30s and the kids are under 10. We've looked at that. That's our largest community group, largest groups in our community right now, but that is consistently getting older. So if we did have a plan or did the surveys necessary and studies necessary to understand where we're at, where we're going and what needs to happen, if we are considerably in advance of that, I think we will have a better opportunity for our residents to age in place. And when I say age in place, I mean people grow out of their communities where they no longer have services, they can't afford it. It's just not viable to live after a certain age in an area that's not friendly. So if there's more opportunities for that, people can stay in Wellington, stay in their community, stay in their homes with their friends and family, and not have to leave us to go to a retirement community like Windsor or Fort Collins that has way more services and functionality. So that's one big thing to consider. The other one we did is I spent a lot of time talking about trash. I am the liaison right now to Larimer County Policy Council regarding solid waste. So I maximize that and talk to people, a lot of people about trash. And I got some great ideas, some potential new events and things that we can be doing in Wellington to better engage the public about our new landfill that's coming north of town. I also talked to folks about how lucky we are that we do have a county landfill and all other services that are available in Larimer County to us versus other communities that do not have those. So that was great. And I talked to a lot of the private haulers as well. So I got a ton of information on that. I will be following up with those and seeing if we can bring more trash to Wellington, at least trash talk. I did that on purpose. Okay. The next item I have, sorry, I'm on my phone, but I promise it's because it's my notes. We talked about a ton of grant resources. There is so much at CML this year that supported folks applying for grants. And this was directly out of feedback that we provided to them last year, saying there's all these grants that we can't take advantage of or are out of our reach, or we have to have matching funds for. What are we supposed to do all that? They took that feedback and of course lobbied for that when it comes to legislation. And then they also came back with 1 million resources for grants. So I got a lot of very specific organizations that I'm looking at regarding aging plans and those kind of items. And then overall plethora of resources as well, including understanding what's new and what's going on at DOLA, which is of course one of our biggest advocates. So lots of grant opportunities that we'll be looking into, I hope, and then more opportunities for support on those. And I also learned of a new concept of, rather than approaching an economic development plan, is rather approaching a town prosperity plan. And what that means and how that's different. And some great learning resources for boards like ours to learn about basics of economic development and how that can build prosperity in your community. And that the difference in the word and terminology, it means a lot to me when it really hit me hard. So that's something I would like to look into further as well. I also looked at a couple communities that had interesting models where there were nonprofit organizations that operated within the function of the town, including the town. Arvada was the one in particular. They had a economic committee essentially that was run as a nonprofit but functioned within and supported by staff within their town. And that was a primary driver for one of the best practices that they showed, where they had an entire development associated with pedestrian access and how they shared their success through COVID. So they're one of the best practices through Arvada and that major project. And they said that a lot of that was attributed to this partnership and built-in functionality of a nonprofit within their organization with an economic committee. And those are my major ones. I have so many more, but those are the ones that I wanted to highlight. And I see a lot of benefits and a lot of follow-up opportunities for our board based off what we learned. And of course, I got to meet and talk to. I'm just going to give the final overview. The perspective you get at CML is really important because in Wellington, we're very concerned and worried about things that are going on here. What's nice to see, not nice, it's actually very unfortunate, is that all other communities our size have the exact same problems. We are not special when it comes to some of the major stressors and challenges that Wellington faces. It seems very personal and special here, and it is, but I think it's important to acknowledge that we're not the only ones who are struggling with water concerns and rates. If anything, kind of to what Trustee Gator mentioned, we went to a couple breakout sessions where they talked about, let's get the best practices from everyone here and let's figure out what we're doing. And every single time they asked for an example of the best idea ever, I had one from Wellington, like that we have already done. Communication plans, budget bonanza. How do you get people to meetings? You give them free pumpkins. That's how you get people to meetings. So we've done some amazing efforts in Wellington that we're continuously building off of. I'm not saying that we're the prime best example ever, but I can say that every time somebody had a great idea, we are already doing that here. So we have more opportunity to build and communicate better always, but it was wonderful to see that people were learning from us. And that was not the case last year, I don't think. So that is attributed to our amazing staff and the feedback we received from the community and the very fast response that we've seen with our group. So thank you all, of course, but that was a lot more than a little bit, sorry.
No, thank you. Thank all of you for going to CML. Thank you. Sorry I couldn't make it, but I'm glad that you were all there. Yeah, you have something.
Super quick. Sorry, there's something. It was a question I had that I don't know if anyone else did with all the infrastructure bill that got passed and all these trillions of dollars for infrastructure. I was thinking that'd be helpful for us with our plants. So I sat through an entirety of an hour's talk to get to the end and ask, okay, so we're in process. We just signed on our loans. Like, yeah, you can't have any of the money. I was like, you gotta be kidding. So there's a ton of money going into DOLA and the water fund and the rates and it's loan forgiveness and grants. And I was like, this is fantastic. I'm taking all these notes. And then they said, oh yeah, because you're already underway, your project can't be considered. So if you were wondering if we're going to see any of that, most likely the answer is no.
Not for these projects,
Not
but
for the-
potentially for future.
For future projects, yes.
So maybe like a
If we
water
want,
storage eventually or other things.
if we want to spend millions of
Right.
other dollars, that will help, but the millions we're trying to pay for now won't help with those. So
I think it's great. We can use it in the future. So yeah, thank you guys for bringing back great stuff. Yeah, definitely going to utilize it, right? All of our ideas, everything we learned. I have before you guys a letter. I don't know if you saw it. A letter of support for the Community Service Center. Larimer County reached out. They basically just want us to say, hey, we support having that here. It's nothing more than that. So I just want to let you guys know that I'll be signing that. And I think it's important for the community. And yeah, that's all I have.
Community Service Center in support of just having services here or specifically in support of Zion Community Service Project?
Can use your microphone. I think the nonprofit associated with the Community Service Center is called Grace Village. It's a separate nonprofit.
Yeah, so I mean, in the letter, it is going to be associated with that, but it is just a letter of support. It will have to go through Larimer County. There's lots of other things further beyond this. They just asked for us to state that we do support it, and then they can come in and make it a thing, or at least look into making it a thing. And so I think that that's important for this community. I mean, the community needs these services, needs a center like this. Getting into the weeds on it right now is not important. I think right now getting support is important. But yeah, so that's all I got. Anybody else? Any other reports? No reports.
I do have one last thing.
Go
So
for it.
in addition to, well, happy Independence Day in advance to everyone. This is Wellington's shining star, of course. Whenever anybody talks about Wellington, what makes our community, it's 4th of July and the celebrations that happen there. So Of course, the schedule of events that are hosted by CAC are available on the Town of Wellington website. A lot of wonderful things planned this year. In addition to that, and for example, the Community Service Center, we have so many passionate community members in Wellington that are doing amazing things. So I wanted to highlight a couple of those as also opportunities for you guys to do and hang out on Independence Day. Following the parade downtown, there will be a beer garden in Centennial Park, you know, the heart of downtown. In addition to that, there's going to be a really cool skate event at the skate park, bringing in some like local skate stars. Apparently, that's
Oh,
not
like
my
nation
vibe.
skate stars.
Like national
Yeah.
level skate stars. That's probably not even the right word, skate stars. I just made that up, but they won't appreciate that. But hopefully they appreciate that I'm telling people to please come to that because it sounds like an incredible thing. And then most of the local businesses on Main Street are going to have specials and everybody to draw people back downtown before fireworks and everything. So I hope that everyone is safe and has plenty of opportunities to celebrate. And Main Street is going to be alive and well this year. So I hope you guys can make it down to Main Street as well.
Having no further business, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
It's a busy week. I really tried to make the agenda short so that we, you know.
Thank you, Patti.
Trying to think ahead. Trying to help.
They're always awake. They just watch TV for hours. And I'm like, okay, you guys need to go to bed.
That's our favorite thing.